Dickens started writing Oliver Twist for Bentley's Miscellany in February 1837. That was the first of the many instalments that would follow. He was still living in Furnival's Inn in Holborn, there, those rather cramped quarters with a wife and indeed a new son. And it was only 3 months later that they moved to Doughty Street, where he wrote the rest of the novel in its entirety. And it's, of course, a fascinating departure for Dickens. He'd written already satirically and with sharp social observation about London in the Sketches by Boz and about the whole of England in the Pickwick Papers. And it was perfectly clear that Dickens had a radical perspective on social life and the political situation in England. But it really comes to the forefront in Oliver Twist, which was inspired by his sense of the injustice of the New Poor Law Act, which resulted in the proliferation of workhouses. And it may possibly have come as something of a surprise to the readers of Oliver Twist that he had such passionate views and was capable of wielding his pen quite so savagely against injustice and the absurd provisions of Parliament. But Oliver Twist was not surprising merely on those grounds. It was also really the first novel of any great significance to have a child right at the centre of it. And Victorians, of course, as we know, were extremely sentimental about children. I should say, incidentally, by way of qualification, that the Victorian age didn't actually start until later in 1837 with the coronation of Queen Victoria. So it starts its life not as a Victorian novel, but it is indeed formally and technically a Victorian novel. And Victorian attitudes to children were indeed somewhat ambiguous, as you might say. There was a great belief in the saintly state of being a child, the innocence, the sweetness, the charm, etc., but also a strong impulse towards discipline and indeed to exploitation, as Dickens was later to be moved to write so passionately against the employment of children in factories and mines and so on. He had, needless to say, personal experience of what it was to work in a dehumanizing environment at a very, very early age. From 11 to 13, he was working in the blacking warehouse in Charing Cross, and so he certainly felt very personally and passionately about the character of Oliver. So I'd like, though, to read now from a section of the book by which time Oliver as the central character has almost been forgotten. And we've moved into the world of Fagin and Nancy and Bill Sikes. Terrifying world. These extraordinarily memorable characters come to an extremely bad end. And Dickens, when he started to do his reading tours, finally, in the very last of his tours, decided to read from the end of the novel, the very ghastly sequence which involves the death of Nancy at the hands of Bill Sikes. And this was a famously brilliant and terrifying rendition by Dickens. People fainted, screamed out loud. He seemed to invest it with extraordinary intensity of feeling, which no doubt had some connection with the distress and guilt, maybe, that he felt around his treatment of his wife and his subsequent attachment to Ellen Turner. But the section that Dickens chose to digest into this remarkable text, which, as I say, was so disturbing to people at the time, is a wonderful condensation of the last 3 chapters of the book. It gives us a tremendously clear idea of Dickens's theatrical instincts, which, alas, he was not able to convey in any of the plays that he wrote, which are all rather formulaic and dull. But here he created, I would think, his dramatic masterpiece. He called this sequence Sikes and Nancy. Chapter 1. Fagin, the receiver of stolen goods, was up betimes one morning and waited impatiently for the appearance of his new associate, Noah Claypole, otherwise Maurice Bolter, who at length presented himself, and cutting a monstrous slice of bread, commenced a voracious assault on the breakfast. "Bolter! Bolter! Well, here I am. What's the matter? Don't you ask me to do anything till I've done eating. That's a great fault of this place. You never get time enough over your meals. You can talk as you eat, can't you?" "Oh, yes, I can talk. I'll get on better when I talk." "Talk away. You won't interrupt me." There seemed indeed no fear of anything interrupting him, as he had evidently sat down with the determination to do a deal of business. "I want you, Bolter," leaning over the table, "to do a piece of work for me, Martha, that needs great care and caution. I say, don't you go a-shoving me into danger, you know. That don't suit me, that don't, and so I tell you. No, there's not the smallest danger in it, not the very smallest. It's only to dodge a woman. An old woman? A young one? I can do that pretty well. I was a regular sneak when I was at school. What am I to dodge her for? Not to do anything, but tell me where she goes, who she sees, and if possible, what she says. To remember the street, if it is a street, or the house, if it is a house, and to bring me back all the information you can. What will you give me? If you do it well, £1, my dear, £1. That's what I never gave yet for any job of work where there wasn't a valuable consideration to be got. Who is she? One of us. Oh, Lord. You doubtful of her? Oh, yeah? She has found out some new friends, my dear, and I must know who they are. I see. I'm your man. Where is she? Where am I to wait for her? Where am I to go? All that, my dear, you shall hear from me. I'll point her out at the proper time. You keep ready in the clothes I've got here for you, and leave the rest to me. That night, and the next again, the spy sat, booted and equipped in the disguise of a carter, ready to turn out a word from Fagin. 6 nights passed, and on each Fagin came home with a disappointed face and briefly intimated that it was not yet time. On the 7th, he returned exultant. It was Sunday night. She goes abroad tonight, said Fagin, and on the right errand, I'm sure, for she's been all alone all day, and the man she's afraid of will not be back much before daybreak. Come with me, quick. They left the house, and stealing through a labyrinth of streets, arrived at length before a public house. It was past 11 o'clock, and the door was closed, but it opened softly as Fagin gave a low whistle. They entered without noise. Scarcely venturing to whisper, but substituting dumb show for words, Fagin pointed out a pane of glass high in the wall to Noah, and signed to him to climb up on a piece of furniture below it and observe the person in the adjoining room. Is that the woman? Fagin nodded. Yes. can't see her face well. She's looking down and the candle's behind her. Stay there. He signed to the lad who had opened the house door to them, who withdrew, entered the room adjoining, and under pretence of snuffing the candle, moved in the required position. Then he spoke to the girl, causing her to raise her face. I see her now. Plainly. I should know her among 1,000. The spy descended, the room door opened, and the girl came out. Fagin drew him behind a small partition, and they held their breath as she passed within a few feet of their place of concealment, and emerged by the door at which they had entered. After her! To the left! Take the left hand, and keep on the other side! After her! The spy darted off, and by the light of the street lamps saw the girl's retreating figure already at some distance before him. He advanced as near as he considered prudent and kept on the opposite side of the street. She looked nervously round. She seemed to gather courage as she advanced and to walk with a steadier and firmer step. The spy preserved the same relative distance between them and followed. Chapter 2. The churches chimed 11:15 as the two figures emerged on London Bridge. The young woman advanced with a swift and rapid step and looked about her as though in quest of some expected object. The young man, who slunk along in the deepest shadows he could find, and at some distance accommodated his pace to hers, stopping when she stopped, and as she moved again, creeping stealthily on, but never allowing himself, in the ardour of his pursuit, to gain upon her. Thus they crossed the bridge, from the Middlesex to the Surrey shore, when the woman, disappointed in her anxious scrutiny of the foot passengers, turned back. The movement was sudden, but the man was not thrown off his guard by it, but shrinking into one of the recesses which surmount the piers of the bridge, and leaning over the parapet the better to conceal his figure, he suffered her to pass. When she was about the same distance in advance as she had been before, he slipped quietly down and followed her again. At nearly the centre of the bridge, she stopped. He stopped. It was a very dark night. The day had been unfavourable, and at that hour and place there were few people stirring. Such as there were hurried past, possibly without seeing, certainly without noticing either the woman or the man. Their appearance was not attractive of such of London's destitute population as chanced to take their way over the bridge that night, and they stood there in silence, neither speaking nor spoken to. The girl had taken a few turns to and fro, closely watched by her hidden observer, when the heavy bell of St. Paul's tolled for the death of another day. Midnight had come upon the crowded city, upon the palace, the night cellar, the jail, the madhouse, the chambers of birth and death, of health and sickness, upon the rigid face of the corpse and the calm sleep of the child. A young lady, accompanied by a grey-haired gentleman, alighted from a hackney carriage. They had scarcely set foot upon the pavement of the bridge when the girls started and joined them. "Not here. I'm afraid to speak to you here. Come away. Out of the public road. Down the steps yonder." The steps to which she pointed were those which, on the Surrey bank and on the same side of the bridge as St. Saviour's Church, form a landing stairs from the river. To this spot the spy hastened unobserved, and after a moment's survey of the place, he began to descend. These stairs are a part of the bridge. They consist of 3 flights. Just below the end of the second, going down, the stone wall on the left terminates in an ornamental pilaster facing towards the Thames. At this point, The lower steps widen, so that a person turning that angle of the wall is necessarily unseen by any others on the stairs who chance to be above, if only a step. The spy looked hastily round when he reached this point, and as there seemed no better place of concealment, and the tide being out, there was plenty of room, he slipped inside, and with his back to the pilaster, and there waited, pretty certain that they would come no lower down. So tardily went the time in this lonely place, and so eager was the spy that he was on the point of emerging from his hiding place and regaining the road above when he heard the sound of footsteps and directly afterwards of voices almost close at his ear. He drew himself straight upright against the wall and listened attentively. "This is far enough," said a voice, which was evidently that of the gentleman. "I will not suffer the young lady to go any further. Many people would have distrusted you too much to have come even so far, but you see, I am willing to humour you." "To humour me?" cried the voice of the girl whom he had followed. "You're considerate indeed, sir, to humour me." Well, it's no matter." "Why, for what purpose can you have brought us to this strange place? Why not have let me speak to you above there where it is light and there's something stirring instead of bringing us to this dark and dismal hole?" "I told you before that I was afraid to speak to you there. I don't know why it is," said the girl, shuddering, "but I have such a fear and dread upon me tonight that I can hardly stand." "A fear of what?" "I scarcely know of what. I wish I did. Horrible thoughts of death and shrouds with blood upon them, and a fear that has made me burn as if I was on fire have been upon me all day. I was reading a book tonight to while the time away, and the same things came into the print. Imagination. No imagination. I swear I saw coffin written on every page of the book in large black letters. Aye, and they carried one close to me in the streets tonight." "There's nothing unusual in that. They have passed me often. Real ones. This was not." "Pray speak to her kindly," said the young lady to the grey-haired gentleman. "Poor creature, she seems to need it." "Bless you, miss, for that. Your haughty religious people would have held their heads up to see me as I am tonight, and would have preached of flames and vengeance. Oh, dear lady, why aren't those who claim to be God's own folks as gentle and as kind to us poor wretches as you?" "You were not here last Sunday night, girl, as you appointed." "I couldn't come. I was kept by force." "By whom?" "Bill Sykes, him that I told the young lady of before. You were not suspected of holding any communication with anybody on the subject which has brought us here tonight, I hope?" "No," replied the girl, shaking her head. "It's not very easy for me to leave him unless he knows why. I couldn't have seen the lady when I did, but that I gave him a drink of laudanum before I come away." "Did he awake before you returned?" "No, and neither he nor any of them suspect me." "Good. Now listen to me. I am Mr. Brownlow, this young lady's friend. I wish you, in this young lady's interest and for her sake, to deliver up Fagin." "Fagin?" "I will not do it. I will never do it. Devil that he is, and worse than devil as he has been to me, as my teacher in all devilry, I will never do it." "Why?" "For the reason that bad life as he has led, I have led a bad life too. For the reason that there are many of us who have kept the same courses together, and I'll not turn upon them, who might any of them have turned upon me, but didn't, bad as they are. Last, for the reason, how can I say it with a young lady here, that among them there is one, this Bill, this Sykes, the most desperate of all, that I can't leave. Whether it is God's wrath for the wrong I have done, I don't know, but I am drawn back to him through everything. And I should be, I believe, if I knew that I was to die by his hand. But one man, not him, not one of the gang, the one man Monks into my hand, and leave him to me to deal with. Or if he turns against the others, I promise you that in that case, there the matter shall rest. They shall go scot-free. Have other ladies promised for that? You have, replied Rose Maylie, the young lady. I've been a liar, and among liars from a little child. But I will take your word. After receiving an assurance from them both that she might safely do so, she proceeded in a voice so low that it was often difficult for the listener to discover even the purport of what she said, to describe the means by which this one man, Monks, might be found and taken. But nothing would have induced her to compromise one of her own companions, little reason though she had, poor wretch, to spare them. Now, said the gentleman when she had finished, you have given us most valuable assistance, young woman, and I wish you to be the better for it. What can I do to serve you? Nothing. You will not persist in saying that. Think now. Take time. Tell me. Nothing, sir. You could do nothing to help me. I'm past all hope. You put yourself beyond the pale of hope. The past has been a dreary waste with you of youthful energies misspent and such treasures lavished as the Creator bestows but once and never grants again. But for the future, you may hope. I do not say that it is in our power to offer you peace of heart and mind, for that must come as you seek it. But a quiet asylum, either in England or, if you fear to remain here, in some foreign country, it is not only within the compass of our ability, but our most anxious wish to secure you. Before the dawn of morning, before this river wakes to the first glimpse of daylight, you shall be placed as entirely beyond the reach of your former associates, and leave as complete an absence of all trace behind you, as if you were to disappear from the earth this moment. Come. Come. I would not have you go back to exchange one word with any old companion, or take one look at any old haunt. Quit them all, while there is time and opportunity. She will be persuaded now, cried the young lady. I fear not, my dear. No, sir. No, miss. I'm chained to my old life. I loathe and hate it, but I cannot leave it. When ladies as young and good, as happy and beautiful as you, miss, give away your hearts, love will carry even you all lengths, when such as I, who have no certain roof but the coffin lid, and no friend in sickness or death but the hospital nurse, set out our rotten hearts on any man who can hope to cure us. This fear comes over me again. I must go home. Let us part. I shall be watched or seen. Go. If I've done you any service, all I ask is leave me and let me go my way alone. Take this purse, cried the young lady. Take it for my sake, that you may have some resource in an hour of need and trouble. No, I'm not done this for money. Let me have that to think of. And yet, give me something you've worn. I'd like to have something. No, not a ring. They'd rob me of that. Your gloves or handkerchief. Anything I can keep. Does that belong to you? God bless you. God bless you. Good night. Good night. The agitation of the girl and the apprehension of some discovery which would subject her to violence seemed to determine the gentleman to leave her. The sound of retreating footsteps followed, and the voices ceased. After a time, Nancy ascended to the street. The spy remained on his post for some minutes, and then, after peeping out to make sure that he was unobserved, darted away and made for Fagin's house as fast as his legs would carry him.